Hey team, this is George. Appreciate all the energy we're starting our class with. I'm looking forward to really diving into the discussions. I wanted to talk about our research project, the different categories specifically. Throughout our 8 weeks, I'm going to be posting different articles and stuff that I've written and research that I've done, along with an explanation of it. Because when you do research, and especially when you write up articles, uh, whenever you turn them in for peer review, because you always want to get your stuff peer reviewed, they come back in really bad shape no matter how good they are moving forward, because everybody has a different perspective on them. So the only reason why I say that is because as you progress, and if you choose to become an influencer or somebody that's a master in the field of psychology, you're going to want to write up your experiences. You're going to want to write up research, things like that. So the key that I take is when you write up your research and you post it for peer review, do not take it personal. Just take it as a learning opportunity, because nobody likes it. So you have to redo it a few times. It's kind of it's more of a an experiment in and of itself on perseverance than anything else. But with that said, let's jump in and talk about our categories. There's four basic categories. There's experimental, where's my finger? Experimental, non-experimental, single subject, and survey that we're looking at. So what is, and here's our project topics. So experimental is when you have a control group, or the group here that does, you do nothing to, and then another group over here where you do something to, you manipulate it with a variable by changing the variable, and you see if there's a difference. So you're really comparing a couple of groups together. I did this when I conducted a study on reaction time for trained martial artists, and we had a control group where I did nothing, and then we had other groups where I taught them mental imagery, things like that, and compared to see if their reaction time got faster. Then there is non-experimental, which is you can't really apply anything to that group. So you're going to just take a look at that group and see what happens to them or that person. There is single subject, where you only want look at that one group, and it's quite often things like a case study. And there are things, surveys as well. And what does a survey do? Survey is exactly what it sounds like. You survey information, you get information, people fill out a survey, and then you receive it back. Um, and the neat thing about some of these topics is they could go in a number of directions. So I'm just going to pick a couple out here. Um, so the reason why I say they can go in multiple directions is because how you set up your research depends whether it's experimental, non-experimental, uh, single subject, or survey. So let's look at reaction to violated social norms. Number 6, how do people react when social norms are violated, i.e. wearing unusual clothing, applauding inappropriately at the end of class, lecturing, things like that. So do you think so are you going to have a control group, somebody who does nothing, and then you're going to compare them to this other group, and the variable is how they react to clothing? Well, that would be experimental. If you use that same person or one group, and there were no reactions of people dressed normally, say. And then you have another group, or you can, if you're going to use a single subject group, you would take that person that was dressed differently and see their reactions, how they react to that person dressing out of the norm, wearing unusual clothing. So that would be a single subject where you use the same subject as a control group and the group that you apply the variable to, in this case, the clothing. Experimental would be you have one group here where you just see them and they do nothing, and nobody is wearing odd clothes or anything like that. And then you compare them to this group on how they react when you introduce that variable of that person wearing odd clothing, or as they say here, just applauding inappropriately at the end of the class, lecture, things like that. So that's simple. 2 ways that can go depending on how you set it up. Now, can you also set that up as a survey? Let's see. Could you send out a survey and say, hey, how would you react if somebody dressed oddly, if somebody applauded inappropriately, things like that? So you can also make that into a survey as well, depending on how you create the experiment. That's why when we go through the methodology section, it's going to be very important that we maintain our groups, our categories, because that's where it's really going to happen. So let's say gum chewing and concentration on simple cognitive tasks. Single subject, experimental, non-experimental, what is it? Well, you can have a control group here and the group where you add the variable of the gum chewing here and compare test scores. You can do that very simply. Gender and singer preference. How about a survey for that one, maybe? You can just send out information to multiple people and get their gender data and their singer preference data and look for correlations, things like that. So there's multiple ways to look at this. Have some fun with it. If you have not received what group you're in yet or what category you're in yet, that's my mistake because as of this point, I believe I have sent everyone what category they are in. So if you do not have your category yet, that is an oversight on my part. So please contact me so we can get this rolling. And remember, by Monday, Monday is the key for these. We have all week to kind of mull this over, discuss it, and ask any questions you need, because Monday is when you're going to do the topic sign up and your IRB handbook statement. And how do we do that? Well, it says right here, uh, sign up, and this is how you do it. Just in the subject line, first initial, last name. So mine would be G. Hanshaw. My research project title, let's say I wanted to do gum chewing. We'll do the gum chewing and simple cognitive tasks. And I have, and then in the body of the post, I just say, I, George Hanshaw, have read the IRB handbook in its entirety. Please don't just copy and paste this and leave in the have/have not. So make sure it's a have, because you have to read the IRB handbook in its entirety prior to moving forward with any of our um, uh, projects here in class. Even though, remember, we're not going to go and actually gather the data, so you will not be interacting with people or human subjects, as we like to call it in research. So I hope this was a little helpful to kind of start taking a look at all this fun stuff we're going to be doing. And remember, have some fun with it. This was research. It shouldn't be um, painful to think about. It should be fun to think about because we're discovering stuff. And whenever you have a chance to discover stuff, it's really neat. So have a fantastic time with this, and please feel free to contact me with anything you need.